Hello, my name is Dr. Tabib Sadeh, and I'm going to speak to you about food revolutions and designer foods. Creation of designer foods will be considered the third revolution in the food industry that will change the way we eat in future. The origin of food hasn't changed that much since we were a caveman. We were hunting for food, eating carcasses of animals, or gathering food from the jungle. The first revolution in food industry happened when we domesticated animals, removing the requirement of hunting. However, still we rely on eating carcasses of animals. The second revolution in food industry happened when we developed agriculture, allowed us to plant and harvest what we need, and brought a large number of diverse foods that were previously not available to mankind. This development therefore removed the requirement of harvesting food from the jungle. For all these reasons, the source of food for mankind has not really changed. We are dependent either on animal food or on plants, and the only difference is that now, as compared to the time we were cavemen, we have a diversity of foods to enjoy in our life. Let us now examine two words, nature and natural. Normally, when we hear the word nature, it reminds us of serenity and the beauty that it holds. However, let's not forget that nature is quite harsh, and with a lot of different natural disasters, hurricane, tsunami, and so many more, we constantly lose humans and our loved ones. There are other ways that nature causes disease and death of mankind. Even before we are born, a host of genetic diseases that result from the damages that nature causes to ourselves. We suffer from a variety of diseases during our lifetime that causes morbidity or mortality. After we are born, then we are exposed to a lot of pathogens and get a lot of diseases, from cardiovascular disease to diabetes, cancer, and many of these also are attributable to the foodborne diseases that result from the food that we receive from nature. Nature also causes us to age and ultimately die, since it's imperfect. Some of the reason is hidden in our DNA. However, our aging is also attributable to some extent to the type of food that we receive. Also, nature sometimes is so imperfect that some of us have certain deficiencies that prevent us from eating certain foods. For example, there is a large number of our population that have lactase deficiency in their gastrointestinal tract, preventing them from eating milk as well as all milk related products. And yet there are other people that they cannot use flour because flour contains gluten. These people are deprived from eating bread as well as all flour related products. Food also causes allergy. In fact, there are many allergens in the food that we eat, ranging from wheat, rice, nuts, and especially those that are red due to presence of a pigment, such as tomato and strawberry. Many people have sensitivity and allergy to egg and egg-related products. Food can also lead to food poisoning, either by preformed toxins that are released by the bacteria that grow within the food, or certain bacteria that proliferate in the food once they enter the gastrointestinal tract can cause gastroenteritis and pain and suffering. Food is subject to contamination during harvesting as well as production and transfers to the factory, and they cause major diseases for human beings, from infections by Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, and so many others. Food can also accelerate and induce cancers. It can clog our arteries by atherosclerosis, and these atherosclerotic plaques over time can narrow and eventually occlude our blood vessels and the heart in our brain and cause infarctions. The food itself is subject to spoilage by a series of bacteria and fungi that can grow on them. For this reason, the mankind has created a host of preservatives. However, addition of these preservatives to our food also has caused allergies, toxicity, and even carcinogenicity. To protect food to avoid such spoilage, we have modified our food. But whether such genetically modified food are healthy or not, it requires time and more studies. We all have to remember that the food that we eat and is required for our health is comprised of three specific categories: fats, protein, and carbs. The modern science suggests that we have to rely mostly on fats, particularly the healthy unsaturated fats, rather than on protein and carbs to sustain our life. It is also very clear that excess consumption of proteins, particularly two amino acids, cysteine and methionine, is associated with a lot of aberrant functioning of our cells. Carbohydrates can lead to glucose intolerance and diabetes. It has become clear that there is a direct relationship between the food that we eat and our longevity. For example, on this slide, you can see people who ate more eggs had less mortality. We have to watch what we eat, since excess intake of food and calorie causes obesity. We have to remember that as we get older, our metabolism slows down, and for this reason, even if we eat the same food that we ate when we were younger, we start to accumulate fat as a belly fat and the other organs, since the excess fat is converted to white fat. Adiposity and obesity is not good, since not only it causes aberrations in the peripheral blood, but also in the functioning of many organs. By and large, it causes the shortening of life and morbidity. It has become clear that reduction in the calorie intake of an individual and less food that they eat is associated with less disease, especially those that are age-related. Such age-related diseases as cancer, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, kidney disease are reduced by taking less calories. These have been verified by experiments done in many animals, including mice, and as you can see here, the mice that are placed on the least amount of calorie intake have a much higher rate of longevity. Studies in mice has shown that the calorie reduction is associated with longevity, so that a 65% decrease in calorie intake is associated with almost 50% increase in the longevity. In addition, longevity works through specific pathways that assures normal functioning of cells are maintained. Calorie intake that is in excess of what the cells need is causing aberrations in these pathways and shortens our lives. These pathways are shared among many different organisms, as primitive as yeast, C. elegans, mice, rhesus monkey, humans. In fact, you can see here that in the right hand side, two rhesus monkeys are compared. The one on the top has taken normal diet, and the one at the bottom has received calorie restriction. you already can see that although these two rhesus monkeys are the same age, the one on the top shows evidence of aging, whereas the one at the bottom shows a healthy appearance. In summary, it is clear that food causes a lot of problems for mankind, ranging from food intolerance to food infection, all kind of allergies, food poisoning. Obviously, it's now clear that consumption of food is associated with many diseases, cancer, diabetes, hypertension. They're all produced by the food that we eat. Food is subject to spoilage, it causes obesity, and of course, shortening of life. Because of all these aspects of food that cause us sick, shortens our life, and has many ingredients that are unwanted by ourselves, we need to become master of our own food. And we require to make foods that are healthy, that are safe, that has only ingredients that support life. And one way of doing this is to start printing them with a 3D printer of tomorrow. I believe that the designer foods should be based and inspired by the fibers in the vegetables. These fibers are not digestible, and hence they don't increase the calorie intake of the individual, and our gastrointestinal tract cannot digest them because we do not have the enzyme necessary to digest them. Instead, the microbiome that resides in our gut uses these fibers as food, ferments them, and produces a large number of substances that enter our peripheral blood. These products are necessary and impact the health of many different organs: liver, pancreas, brain. It elevates our mood, and for this reason, we have to rely on the fibers of the vegetables to create the building block for the tomorrow's food. It is my belief that within a decade we will have designer foods and the 3D printers that would allow us to print foods that are comprised of healthy substances without the unwanted material that we see in nature, which is very reminiscent of what we see in Star Trek Replicator.